In the dead of night, a single flickering lantern cut through the suffocating darkness of the forest. A man named Babilal Shivat, his own breath fogging the cold air as he desperately searched for a path. "Hello, is anyone there? Where is this road?" His voice, thin and trembling, was swallowed by the silence. Then, a sound, soft whispers like silk rustling in the dark, seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Babula lifted his lantern, his heart hammering against his ribs. Standing directly in front of him was his mother. Her sari was soaked through, and water dripped from the ends of her long hair, plastering it to her face. But it was her eyes that made his blood run cold. They glowed with an unnatural, sickly green light. "Mother, how are you here?" he stammered, taking a hesitant step forward. But before he could get any closer, her face began to melt. Her features drooped and sagged, dripping away into a thick black sludge. In that same instant, a gust of wind snuffed out his lantern, plunging him into absolute blackness. And then, something strong and cold seized him, pulling him down into the water, dragging him deep into the suffocating darkness. The only thing left behind was the echo of his final, terrified scream. The villagers had always warned of this place. They said a creature called Ba lived in that black swamp. A shapeshifter, a mimic, a creature that could take any form to lure you in. And whoever heard its whisper never escaped alive. That night, Babilal, in a hurry to get home, had taken a shortcut through the swamp. By morning, when he hadn't returned, his wife's worried cries raised the alarm. A dreadful certainty quickly settled over the village. The swamp had claimed another victim. The place was called Kalasargot, the Blackhead Swamp, and it festered at the northern edge of their village. Even in the bright light of day, it was deathly silent. The water wasn't just dark, it was pitch black, thick and viscous like mud. Gnarled thorny babul and kika trees stood like skeletal sentinels around its perimeter, and right at its center was a deep pit, a place where, according to legend, dozens of bodies were buried 100 years ago. It was a place of no return. At sunrise, a somber procession of villagers gathered their courage and marched toward the area where Babula was last seen. As they neared the swamp's edge, the signs were unmistakable. A broken boat, its wood splintered and rotting. Torn pieces of cloth snagged on thorns. A scattering of strange white sticks that looked disturbingly like bone. And there, hanging from a low branch like a final, grim farewell, was Babilo's hat. But there was no body, not a single trace of the man himself. Fear, cold and absolute, gripped the search party, forcing them to turn back. The verdict was unanimous: Babilal was dead. But 3 people refused to accept this. Raghunath, a brave and stubborn man; Gauri, whose loyalty was fierce; and Kartik, the youngest and most determined of the trio. They decided they would not let the swamp keep its secrets. They would return, but under the cover of darkness, to avoid spreading more panic throughout the village. "Night will show us the truth," Raghunath had said, his voice firm. When the last light faded and the village slept, the 3 of them slipped out, their lanterns casting long, dancing shadows. Under the moonless sky, the swamp looked even more terrifying. The footprints they had seen earlier in the day now led directly to the water's edge and simply vanished, as if someone had walked straight in and sunk like a stone. A cold, clammy fog began to roll in, wrapping around them, and the flames in their lanterns grew weaker, sputtering as if starved of air. And then the voices began. "Gauri, my daughter, why didn't you listen to me? Come to me." Each of them heard a different voice, a voice they knew, a voice they loved. "Kartik, my son, help me. I'm trapped. Raghunath, my friend, come here. You promised you wouldn't leave me." Gauri's eyes widened. She saw a figure emerge from the murky water, wrapped in a familiar sari. Its hair was long and dangling, its face a blurry mess, its body seemingly woven from cloth and mud. "Gauri, come fast. Don T, leave me alone." The figure wailed before dissolving back into the swamp. Kartik stared, mesmerized, at the black water where he saw the image of his father, arms stretched out in desperation. "Kartik, pull me out. I'm stuck. Take my hand." From the mud, rotting, skeletal hands emerged, reaching for him. A foul, putrid smell of decay filled the air. This wasn't human. Raghunath stumbled back, his rational mind fighting against the terror. "This is not real. This is something else," he shouted, as if in answer loud, bubbling sounds erupted from the swamp's surface. The whispers that had been circling them grew louder, twisting and deepening into a monstrous guttural growl that shook the very ground. "Come to me, all of you." Gauri and Kartik were completely hypnotized, their eyes glazed over. They began to walk, zombie-like, toward the darkest part of the swamp. Raghunath screamed, "Stop!" but his voice couldn't reach them. They were lost. A huge wave of black water rose up, as if an unseen mouth had opened widened. The swamp swallowed both of them whole. All that remained were their flickering lanterns and their sandals, floating on the no-still surface. Raghunath fell backwards, a scream of pure horror tearing from his throat. Before him, something enormous began to rise from the mud. A tall, faceless figure, its body a shifting mass of dripping black sludge. Where its eyes should have been were two glowing, green pits of light. The swamp itself seemed to have become a living, breathing monster. Its voice rumbled like thunder, echoing through the trees. "I need more souls for my lost spirits." Raghunath didn't wait. He turned and fled, crashing through the forest, falling, stumbling, crying. He ran without stopping until he reached the village square at the crack of dawn and collapsed. When the villagers gathered, he told them everything, his voice cracking with terror and grief. Gauri and Kartik's families broke down, their wails of sorrow filling the morning air. And in the midst of the chaos, an old priest named Madhavra was summoned. Madhavra was the oldest and wisest man in the village, the keeper of its history. He listened to Raghunath's story, his face grave. "You must now hear the truth," he said, his voice silencing the crowd. "The demon in the swamp is not Ba, it is Bakulana. Centuries ago," he explained, "Bakulana was a powerful practitioner of black magic. He would lure poor, desperate villagers to the swamp, promising them blessings and wealth. Instead, he sacrificed them in a dark ritual to gain immortality. He needed 100 pure souls to complete his work. But the villagers discovered his evil plot before he could finish. They captured him, tied him with iron chains, and buried him alive in the very swamp he had defiled. With his last breath, he screamed a curse. "My ritual will be completed. I will take every lonely, greedy, and fearful soul who dares to approach." His malevolent soul merged with the swamp itself. He became the shape-shifting, soul-eating demon they called Ba. "He cannot be killed," Madhavra explained grimly, "but he can be bound again." And there was only one person who could do it, Raghunath. Because the demon had touched him but failed to take his soul, Raghunath was now an incomplete victim. He held a unique connection, making him the only one the demon might listen to. A binding ritual had to be performed at the stroke of midnight on the new moon Amavasya. It would require mud from the swamp, red threads soaked in sacred ash, and 3 drops of Raghunath's own blood. At midnight, the air was thick with dread. Madhavra, Raghunath, and a few brave men returned to the swamp. Their lanterns, the only defense against the oppressive dark. They marked out 4 corners with red powder and laid a circle of wet swamp soil in the center. Madhavra took a small knife and made a shallow cut on Raghunath's finger. 1, 2, 3 drops of blood fell into the center of the circle. Instantly, the air froze. The swamp began to churn violently. Horrifying faces formed in the mud. Babulal, Kartik Gauri, their features melting, twisting, screaming in silent agony. And then Bakulana emerged again. A towering, faceless monstrosity, eyes like green portals to hell, hands made of knotted roots and human bones. "I need their souls," it boomed. Raghunath stood firm inside the protective circle and began to chant the ancient words Madhavra had taught him. Bakulana lunged, trying to break the ritual, but every time it touched the line of red ash, a flash of light pushed it back, screeching in fury. The voices of the dead echoed in Raghunath's ears, trying to break his will, showing him visions of his lost friends. His mind teetered on the edge of madness. Finally, as the demon reared up for one last attack, Madhavra shouted the final line of the mantra. A violent whirlpool erupted in the center of the swamp. Bakulana let out a shriek so loud the trees shook and leaves rained down. The demon was pulled down, dragged into the churning depths of the swamp. And then, silence, a profound, absolute silence, returned. Raghunath collapsed inside the circle, alive, but just barely. Madhavra rushed to his side, whispering, "You have bound him. But remember, the curse is not dead, it only sleeps." Back in the village, the survivors gathered. Madhavra issued a final, solemn warning. No one must ever go near that swamp again. Fear, greed, loneliness, these are the things that awaken him. The villagers nodded, a vow passing between them. The swamp of Kalasargat was forever forbidden. But even today, some nights when the wind is quiet and the moon is hidden, a single bubble rises to the surface of the black water, and a whisper faint and seductive, floats out on the fog, searching for its next victim. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our next chilling tale.